My name is Davis, 29 years old. I work as a taxi driver. I was supposed to be working as an employee at some company, but soon after joining the company, I made all kinds of mistakes that no one else would. Although kind seniors covered for me when I was new, other colleagues were quickly learning their jobs and handling various chores, while I was only doing the simple tasks I was taught when I joined. No matter how long I worked, for some reason the number of mistakes I made didn't decrease, and before I knew it, my colleagues were saying things like, "Isn't that guy hopeless?" I thought so too. That guy makes more mistakes than anyone else, and he must know it himself, but he doesn't improve at all. We take notes on what we're told every day and try to improve immediately, but he's not doing that, is he? Among my colleagues, I was considered not only incompetent, but also lazy for not improving despite making repeated mistakes. However, that's not true. When I try not to make a mistake, I end up making a different one. And when I try to be careful not to make that mistake, I end up making the one I was careful about before. And that doesn't change even if I take notes. I don't know the clear reason, but it seems that there's something wrong with my brain. However, this is not something that can be understood during student days when all you had to do was study. It just looks like I'm doing a sloppy job. Even if I'm careful, when I'm tired or my head is full of other things, I still make the same kind of mistakes. It was such a troublesome thing. And of course, it wasn't just my colleagues who saw me that way. Half a year after I started working, and then a year later, I could tell that even my seniors were getting fed up with me and giving up on me. One day in my second year at the company, I was finally called out by my direct supervisor, who had been gentle. The words he said to me with a determined look on his face were, "It's not that you're not trying. That's something I have been watching you the closest, and those guys know very well. But we've never seen someone like this before, so we're running out of ways to deal with it. You can see that everyone looks busy, can't you? And I feel bad for them that they always have to cover for your work. I don't want to say this to you, Davis, who's always working hard, but maybe this job isn't right for you. I can't even do proper reporting and communication. But that's because while I'm panicking about multitasking, everything I'm supposed to do flies out of my head. Of course, I took a lot of notes so that I could remember things quickly even if they flew out of my head. But once I panic, I forget that I took notes, that I have sticky notes on my computer and desk, and I get absorbed in what I'm interested in. That's why missing documents and forgetting to report were a daily occurrence. No matter what improvement measures I implemented, it didn't work. At first, my seniors were always looking out for me, and some mistakes could be prevented, but they couldn't keep doing that forever. Gradually, my seniors stopped looking out for me, and while my colleagues were all working vibrantly on their own, I was again alone, repeating the same mistakes day after day. Maybe I would have been diagnosed with something these days. But even if I were diagnosed, I knew that while companies might hire the so-called incompetent, there aren't many that would understand my characteristics and give me special consideration. So I was determined to cling on no matter what. But if I was asked to leave like this in an apologetic manner, there was no choice. I had no choice but to submit my resignation myself. However, no matter how incompetent I may be, I can't live without working. But I had already pretty much figured out what I probably couldn't do based on my life experience so far. I decided to become a taxi driver, and as soon as I made up my mind, I went to get my license right away. After a while, I successfully got my license and started working as a taxi driver. As expected for a service industry, there were all kinds of customers, but if I responded sincerely, there were no major problems and I was able to finish my work somehow. Since the salary is based on commission, in order to earn as much as possible, I asked my seniors about areas where many people use taxis, and also tried to increase my sales by responding quickly to app reservations. Thanks to my efforts, my salary is now higher than when I was a company employee, and I was relieved that I could finally live on my own. Then one day, thinking that there might be more customers today because the weather looks bad, I was driving around the downtown area. Before I knew it, lightning began to flash in the cloudy sky, and thunder rumbled a little after the light. And after a while, raindrops started to form on a car's windshield, and before I knew it, large raindrops were hitting the window hard. Surprised by the sudden thunderstorm, I checked the weather forecast on my smartphone, and it said a hurricane was coming today. It was already approaching evening, and although I thought I couldn't go home because the busy time was just starting, the rain kept getting stronger. While I thought it would be hard to see ahead if it got any more intense, I kept driving slowly through the downtown area. However, it seems everyone had the same idea. Older, more experienced drivers had already parked their cars one after another in front of the bar district, leaving no room for me to enter. They beat me to it. Of course, other old hands would know the spots my seniors told me about. Just my luck. I gotta find some good spots on my own. Alright, let's move to another place. I tried to shake it off and go to another street lined with bars, but no matter where I went, there were already more than enough taxis waiting for customers. This is bad. I hadn't picked up many customers today, but it looks like this area is no good either. Thinking that, I tried heading to another downtown area, but the situation was the same. As the wind got stronger and visibility got worse, I decided to give up on picking up any more customers today. With visibility this bad, rather than making money, things could end up even more miserable. Of course, I don't want to get into an accident, but I also don't want to increase my expenses any further. I decided to call it a day and head back to the company early. After driving through a residential area from downtown to the company, I had to drive on a road that was barely paved and surrounded by paddy fields and grass. Due to the heavy rain, the roads were quite congested, but I managed to make it back before the storm hit. I got through the traffic and kept driving on the dark, deserted country road leading to the company. There are streetlights here and there, but other than that, there are no bus stops or anything. Usually it's an easy road to drive on, but due to those conditions, visibility isn't very good, so I was driving slowly and carefully to avoid accidentally falling into the paddy fields. Then, amidst the pouring rain, I saw a figure that looked like a woman near one of the lights. Thinking it was strange for someone to be standing on the road in this heavy rain, I stopped the car and squinted to get a better look at the figure, and saw that it was a young woman standing alone on the pitch-black road. Why is she outside on a day like this? And in a place a bit far from the residential area too. The woman was standing on the roadside hunched over, without an umbrella in this heavy rain, but also without any indication that she was in a hurry to run somewhere. Seeing the woman like that made my heart race. I thought there must be some reason for it, but if she kept standing there, she would definitely fall. Excuse me. Why are you standing in a place like that? I called out to the motionless woman in a loud voice, but there was no response from her. However, the weather wasn't conducive to waiting for her to speak. Losing my patience, I said, "Come on, just get in quickly," in a somewhat rough tone, but I gently pushed the unresponsive woman into the back seat of the car. "I'm sorry. I just wanted to be alone, so I was there," the woman said, and didn't continue. Unable to drive off with her saying that, I had no choice but to silently look at her from the front seat for a while. Her light brown-dyed hair was completely drenched from the rain, rippling over her thin-knit top. Perhaps she had a loose perm. A gentle, feminine scent wafted from her wet hair. She was a kind-looking woman around my age. Not very big eyes, a slender small nose, and small lips. Her eyes were red, likely from crying for a long time, and the area around them was sunken in as if from exhaustion. Her complexion was terribly pale from the cold. Having only interacted with women as colleagues or customers as a driver for a long time, I was a bit flustered at having picked up a woman like this. But this wasn't the time to dwell on that. "Anyway, you'll catch a cold staying like that. I know. Where do you live? I'll give you a ride, no charge," I said. But the woman wouldn't say anything. This was troubling. It was almost 11 p.m. I needed to get to bed early since I had the early shift tomorrow, but this was a problem. Standing there completely drenched in a place like that, and unable to even state a destination. I stayed silent for a while, simply sharing time with her. How long had it been? The soaking wet woman finally opened her mouth. "I'm sorry. Actually, I had a fight with my husband. I made him really mad, so I'm scared to go home." "I see. Thank you for telling me something difficult to say." "Yes," the woman replied, staring at a single point with a frightened look. Do you have any friends or relatives nearby you can rely on?" "No. We moved here with my husband and son a few years ago." "I see. That's tough. But in this weather, I think you should go home once." After saying that, I pondered for a while and then said, "I think you'll catch a cold staying like that, so why don't you come to my place for now? Of course, I'm not a suspicious person. Also, I need to return this car to the company, so I'll lend you a towel and such at my apartment. Please take a bath and warm up." It was still March. The nights were cold. I couldn't bear to see the woman completely drenched like that. To which she replied, "Oh no, I couldn't trouble you like that." "Then what will you do? The weather forecast said a hurricane is coming. Are you planning to stand in that rain again?" "You're right. I'm sorry for inconveniencing you when we've just met, but thank you for your kindness," she timidly responded. I quickly brought her to my apartment, showed her where the bathroom was, and told her where to find the shampoo, conditioner, towels, hair dryer, and such. I also handed her a change of clothes. Having never lived with a woman, I of course didn't have any women's clothing, but I decided to lend her the cleanest pajamas I had. Her name seemed to be Sarah. Sarah thanked me profusely and disappeared into the changing room. After seeing her off, I hurried to the company. The rain was falling harder than before, and the wind had picked up. I was glad I brought her with me. When I arrived at the company, people were surprised to see me completely drenched for some reason, but I had no time to explain and rushed back to my apartment. Click. I'm back. When I entered my apartment, Sarah had just finished her bath and was drying her hair. Noticing I had returned, Sarah turned to me and said, "Oh, thank you for letting me use your clothes and bath. And the hair dryer too. Thank you for everything. You really helped me out." "No, it's fine. I think anyone who saw someone that drenched would want to help. We all need help sometimes," I replied. "Thank you," Sarah said and fell silent. I'm not the type who can say clever things at times like this either. I'll boil some water now. Would you like something warm to drink? Also, I'll make a simple meal, so please eat if you'd like." Hearing that, Sarah said I'll help, but my apartment's sink is narrow and there's only one burner, so it didn't seem passable for two people to cook together, so I declined. I had Sarah sit while I chopped vegetables to make a simple soup. In the meantime, I boiled water in the kettle and prepared to make coffee and green tea. Perhaps it became easier to talk while I had my back turned, because before I knew it, Sarah had started telling me why she had been standing in that place. Sarah was a family of 3 with her husband and son, and until now, since her son was young, she hadn't even worked part-time. Her son's name was Tyler, 6 years old. He was supposed to start elementary school this year. No longer needing to worry about picking up Tyler, Sarah, who likes being out to begin with, told her husband she wanted to work a part-time job until evening. At that, her husband flew into a rage. "What? You want to go out and find another man or something? And are you saying my income isn't enough? How dare you say that? We've been able to live on it so far, so it should be fine as is," he shouted, and apparently went on an uncontrollable rampage. Her husband's intense anger continued for so long that Sarah, fearing for her safety, quickly took her son's hand, got on a bus, left him with her parents, and had intended to stay at her parents' place. However, even when she told her worried parents the reason for the fight, they apparently had no understanding at all. Her mother said, "If your husband says so, you have no choice but to obey. You have Tyler too. The most important thing is for you two to get along. Okay, marriage is a series of compromises. You overcome that and become a family. So you can't expect to have everything your way. If you can't live as is, your husband's way of thinking is wrong, but if your husband is against it, you need to compromise too since he's supporting you, don't you think?" And her very old-fashioned thinking father said, "I feel like I understand what Max is thinking too. I've heard stories of people going down the wrong path starting from things like that, so he's probably just worried. And if his income is enough, there's no need for you to go out of your way to work, right? Wouldn't it be better to focus on taking care of the house instead?" Even though she would be home by a little after 3 p.m. when Tyler would return from school, her father still said all she needed to do was take care of the house, and Sarah couldn't take it anymore. "You're saying once I became a mother, all I should do is housework? That's the housewife image from your generation, Dad. Even back then, there must have been people who wanted to go out and interact with others. But the ones who didn't let them were men, right? saying that lit the fuse on her father's anger, and he too flew into a rage. Sarah's father was also the type who became uncontrollable when angry, and took a long time to calm down. Moreover, Sarah was well aware that this time she had clearly spoken poorly, so she knew her father's anger would be difficult to abate. No longer able to stay at her parents' place either, Sarah unintentionally ran out of the house and had been walking aimlessly for a while when she unfortunately got caught in the heavy rain. I also had a father like that, so I understood the feeling of not being able to go home. Conveying that, I felt like Sarah's somewhat cold expression softened a little. He was so kind up until we started dating. I never thought he would get that angry just from me saying I wanted to work. As a result, I ended up troubling you, Sarah mumbled sadly. Not knowing what to say to her, I simply replied, I was troubled by my father like that too, and ran away from home many times. Each time, someone helped me out. It's hard dealing with people you can't reason with. It really is. So please don't apologize anymore. I don't think you troubled me at all. Then I poured hot water into the teacups and made warm tea, setting it down with a clink in front of Sarah. Thank you. After that, I had a leisurely tea with Sarah, then had her eat vegetable soup and stir-fried meat and vegetables. For the time being, I decided to drive her to her parents' house. Fortunately, her parents' house wasn't too far from here, so I was able to drop her off quickly. Even after hearing a story like that, I thought it would be cruel to send her back as is, but it would be worse to have her stay at my place. If I had family, it might be different, but I'm a single guy living alone. Of course, even if she ended up staying over, I had no ill intentions, but for a woman it would undoubtedly be frightening. Besides, even if they're fighting, if her dad found out his daughter was out in the hurricane without even her phone, he would surely be worried sick. Sarah had a gloomy expression the whole time, but when I said she couldn't stay at my place, she said, "You're right. I'll try apologizing to my father and talking to him again," and got in the car. "I'm sorry. I wish I could have let you stay at my place," I said. "No, it's okay. My father is the type who will sometimes understand if I talk to him after he's cooled down from his anger. Meeting a kind person like you has given me a bit of courage too. I'll give it another try." After about a 15-minute drive from my place, we arrived at her parents' house. Thanking me profusely, Sarah said I will never forget this kindness, and went inside the house. As soon as she opened the front door, I saw the face of a man who seemed to be her worried father rushing out, and felt a little relieved. When I got home, I remembered what time I had to get up tomorrow, and felt terribly depressed. But when I thought back on helping a woman today, my fatigue disappeared and I felt like I could face tomorrow positively. Helping people is a curious thing. Even though I'm the one who helped someone in need, somehow I end up feeling lighter and more positive. In fact, perhaps the very act of helping others is partly done to help oneself. I definitely felt my past painful experiences and the difficult feelings they gave rise to fading after helping her. Today was a good day somehow. I hope Sarah's father and husband will understand. With that thought, I fell asleep before I knew it. After that, it was back to the usual routine. Thinking about how to get customers, I drove various routes. In the meantime, I responded to calls from the app and company while also handling reservation jobs. At first I was concerned about Sarah, but as I got busier with work each day, I gradually had no time to think about her. Then one day, late at night, I got a request to go to a certain family restaurant, so I was driving on that country road again. Waiting in front of the restaurant was a salaryman and a boy. The man, who looked very competent with his crisp suit and hairstyle, showed me his phone screen and said, "Excuse me, to this address in D-Town please." The address he showed me was none other than Sarah's parents' house. No way is this guy. I was very shaken inside, but if I showed it on my face now, who knows what Sarah might go through again. With that thought, I desperately tried to focus on driving without changing my expression. The two rode in silence for a while, but after some time the boy asked the salaryman, "Hey, can we go home today?" To which the man replied with a troubled smile, "Yay, if your mom says it's okay." About 2 weeks had passed since then, but from that conversation I could tell Sarah was likely still at her parents' place. And her son too. The two were quiet for a while, but then the boy spoke up again. "Hey, I'm gonna be an elementary school student in April, right? I'm gonna go to school from home. So why have I been at Grandpa's house all this time? Even when I ask Mama, all she says is sorry. I want to go home already, the boy said sulkily, to which the salaryman replied in a troubled tone, sorry, your mom is just being selfish. Then he fell silent. The boy looked like he wanted to ask something, but perhaps realizing from the man's demeanor that he shouldn't pursue it further. He seemed to be holding back despite clearly wanting to talk to the man who seemed to be his father. Silence continued for a while again. Then, perhaps at a complete loss for what to do, the man asked me, a total stranger, this? He asked me, a complete stranger, something like this. I'm sorry to suddenly ask you this, but is it really that bad to oppose your wife wanting to work when your income is sufficient? Hearing those words, I was convinced once more. This man was definitely Sarah's husband. However, I'm single. Moreover, I have zero experience with women. But even I, if I had a wife, don't understand a reason for opposing it when the son is a bit older. So I decided to ask the husband his reason. I'm not married, but even if my income was enough, if my wife said she wanted to, I feel like I would happily say okay. Why don't you want your wife to work? When I timidly asked that, the husband said, I'm not really sure why myself. When my wife said she wanted to work, I just saw Ed for some reason. It's embarrassing to admit, but we're fighting because of that, and my wife hasn't come home. But with our son starting elementary school next month, we can go on like this forever, but my wife is being stubborn too. I'm at a loss for how we can reconcile our opinions. But as for why I'm so angry, saying that, the husband sighed and ran his hand through his hair. If it was just because there's no need for her to work, I think I'd be fine with letting her do as she pleases. My income isn't so low that I'd say petty things like the taxes we'd have to pay would increase. I know I should just let her do what she wants. But I think I just don't want my wife going out into the outside world. And I feel like I wouldn't want acquaintances to think she's supplementing our income with a part-time job. Listening to his story, I thought, I see. So that's how people who oppose it feel. Certainly, the neighbors might think she's working to increase your income. But even if you have your wife deny that, it still wouldn't work. I replied, choosing words that wouldn't provoke his pride, to which he said, that's true. My wife is kind and always listens to what I say, so I may have taken that for granted. But don't you ever worry that if your wife is out there, she might? He asked that while subtly covering his son's ears. Well, I think that does happen with some people. But is your wife really the type to do that? I'm sorry, I can say it well, but I think at that point, it comes down to how much you can trust your wife. But if you're worried about it, your wife must be attractive. In that case, I can understand a feeling of concern, I said. Right. When I gave a reply empathizing a little with the husband's feelings, he eagerly lashed onto it. However, this won't do. With that thought, I continued. But by denying your wife's will, there's a rift in your relationship now, right? At this rate, it seems to be going in a bad direction even before she starts her part-time job. And once your son enters elementary school, I think your wife's opportunities to interact with people outside will increase anyway, so there's no point in only worrying about a part-time job. Oh, I know. I'm sorry, but my mother also says she couldn't do anything besides housework back then, and she still holds that against my father even now. My father is always apologizing for that. They even considered divorce at one point because my mother was so depressed. I'm sorry, I don't know if your wife is that troubled, but why don't you try having an honest talk with her again? As we talked, the familiar road I dropped Sarah off at a little while ago gradually came into view. Oh no, was I a bit too impudent? I fretted that I may have said too much, but the husband had a somehow refreshed expression. Driver, thank you for seriously considering my sudden personal consultation. I think I was probably embarrassed to show my wife my unseemly side, so I suppressed it with anger and ended up making my wife angry. And I thought I had conveyed my dissatisfaction to my wife, but she was also angry at having her opinion denied, so she wasn't calm. Like my feelings didn't get across to her well. I'm sorry. Even if it's embarrassing, I'll try conveying my feelings. Somehow, you're easy to talk to, driver, and I ended up telling you all my real thoughts. Thank you. Oh, this is just a small token of my gratitude. Saying that, The husband pressed a considerably large sum into my hand. "No, I can't accept this much." I hurriedly tried to give him change, surprised at the large amount, but he said, "No, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have been able to clearly realize my own feelings. And you listened to my embarrassing true thoughts without denying them. I was really happy with how you responded, driver. Look, iron well. This much is no problem, so please accept it." The husband closed the door with a smile and ran towards the front door. "Wait, sir." I hurriedly tried to stop him, but the husband hastily went inside the house, and I got a call from another customer, so I couldn't stay there any longer. I felt bad about it, but I ended up accepting that gratuity. I thought he would be more stubborn, but from how he acted, I feel like it'll be okay. People's feelings aren't always right. I feel like I only said sensible things to the husband, but there are surely many people in this world who would stop their partner out of worry that they might get jealous like that. And even I might feel that way if I got a girlfriend I really loved. But I just quietly drove away from in front of Sarah's parents' house, praying that she wouldn't be forcibly taken home again while still suppressing her feelings. A few days later, a certain woman called the company I work for. Apparently, she said a young taxi driver at this company helped her when she was in trouble. And now that the problem was solved, she was okay and wanted to say thank you so much. There are other young guys at this company, but I know for sure this is about me. I see. So it worked out for Sarah. She must have properly talked it out honestly with her husband. That's good. Even though the husband had a change of heart there, I was worried he might revert when faced with Sarah. But it seems they somehow managed to discuss it well. Marriage is a difficult thing. Even if you marry a dependable person, you might be suppressed because they are confident in their own abilities, or like with Sarah, they might not even listen to you because of their insecurities. But even if your opinions clash and they won't listen to you for a time, as long as you both have the willingness to meet halfway, you can start over. As someone who's never even dated a woman, it's unknown territory for me, but that's how you deepen your bond while sometimes disagreeing. Seeing Sarah and her family made me think I want to build a family like that someday.